I've done several consultations in different capacities, and I've really enjoyed all of them, for different reasons. But the consistent thing throughout is how, valued my voice and opinions were within the consultation service. So I thought that that was really cool, to be able to contribute in that way and also be recognized, um, for the knowledge or experience that I might bring, not only just through conversation, but monetarily also means a lot as well because people with disabilities don't always get the recognition that they deserve for the experience that they bring. So yeah, I really have enjoyed it.
And then also, I think the researcher's perspective, I think it's also creating a foundation really of how to engage patient partners, engage participants, engage individuals with disabilities. Because sometimes in research, sometimes it's really difficult to get into participants involved. To get kind of patient partners involved because it's difficult to kind of attract them in terms of advertisement and also knowing how to access these individuals. So I think through this consultation service that NEF has been doing, I think it's really creating kind of that foundation and making it more accessible for researchers to engage in patient partners and know how to engage in patient partners to get kind of the most out of the patient partner and for the research.
In the future, I think it would be great to see more than just a consultation, but really involving youth members in like co-consultation or co-authorship role as well, and kind of giving them more opportunity to take a little bit more of leadership position.
One who's been here at one of the longest times with Matthias and Hans. I'm really happy to see that our panel has grown, especially in the last year. I'm really happy to know that we have a very diverse group that comes from across the country. One thing that I would like to see is a more diverse in terms of either disability or diagnosis, specifically for like genetically fragile folks, because I know that on the CEC there are parents of medically complex folks, and I would like to one day see those folks participate in.
One thing I'm glad is like we have more younger like members now, right? So it's really nice to see. I would hope in terms of like we would get more of like the indigenous perspectives, right? To join like our group, right? I think it's like one demographic we always keep mentioning has not been like represented, right? So I think it'll be nice to see, hopefully.
I feel like this is definitely one of the more diverse groups I've been a part of. I myself am trans, and I really like sharing my experience with that. And I often see like very few trans people represented in studies, especially in that area of like LGBT and neurodiversity, because they intersect quite a lot, and it's really good to see like little steps be made towards studying the area. So that is something that's encouraging to me.
Say that mainly suicidality among young medically complex, neurodivergent, or disabled youth, and also giving those same youth good pathways to transition into the workplace or assisted care or wherever it is that they are going after high school, if they choose to go to high school. I think that a focus on making those transitions a lot easier for them is something that would be very, very helpful. And also combating ableism in school, because that is usually where ableism is felt, and then by the time that these youth grow up, they're adults, and they have a lot of trauma from that environment.
That I think it's also important to combat ableism and continue to look at accessibility issues as well, because as much as people think the world is already accessible, there's still a lot of issues going on. And I also think it's important, this is based off my own research and some of the research I've done, I think it's important to examine children and youth and other young adults with disabilities, but focus more on the positive aspects it brings to the families rather than focusing on the negative aspects it brings, such as the extra stress and whatnot. I think a shift in societal values and norms and stigma needs to be changed as well.
As to the connection between gender diverse and neurodiverse folks, as I'm also trans, and as someone who's been on the panel long enough that I've actually transitioned throughout this panel, so I also really appreciate that everyone has been really supportive at Childbright in terms of that. So I don't see why that research should be not in the forefront coming in the future.
I'd love to see more research into how best autistic the teens coming into adulthood can be supported in understanding responsibilities that they're being entrusted with in just what is assumed of them in college, university, and in the workplace, because a lot of that is very set in unwritten rules instead of spoken rules, and that is very difficult for some of us to navigate. So having supports there would be really helpful, and also more focus and study into different learning styles that can help people succeed the most in college and university, instead of just the basic accommodations we get and the small bits of accessibility we're given in secondary schools and in college and then in the workplace. And then finally, I think one really cool area of research would be into stimming and why it is so therapeutic and why it can be a release for us. So just why it helps and what people can do to really find stims that help them. So yeah.
Building off of the previous points, I think that particularly transition to adult care is something that I find myself very passionate about, and it was something that was very poorly handled in my own medical care, to the point where there were some life-threatening experiences just because of an inability to communicate with the pediatric healthcare system. And perhaps biased because I've done some research in this area, but the use of digital healthcare as a tool to be able to better this pediatric to adult healthcare system is something that I'm quite interested in. And I think that can ultimately be one of the biggest solutions, is really putting those supports in digitally for people and making sure that they're able to interact with the pediatric healthcare system in a proper way.
It would be interesting to look at economic barriers, right? Ability to get work in specific fields, right? This is also coming from my lived experience, right? Where I've been judged based on certain aspects of my care, right? And then whether stuff like competencies, understanding accommodations, right? And would that really impact your chances to be hired, right? Whether disclosing stuff would impact your ability to move up the ladder and stuff. So I think it'll be interesting.
So I'm a new member to the NYAP. However, I would just like to say I agree with a lot of the comments here on increasing research around transition into adulthood for youth with disabilities. A lot of those services do seem to change as you enter adulthood, and having more information on how to enter the workforce or university would be really excellent. A lot of information around disclosure, how that impacts different employers' view of you and your transition through that process would be really interesting to have. Another area I think would be interesting to have more information on is how accessible information and services are. I think a lot of people don't have the information necessary to even know where to look or where to start to gain accommodations. And so just looking at who is accessing services and who is not, and why, what's holding them back from getting the services and supports they need.
Thank you for joining us in the conference. Thank you.
Bye from the CEC.
See you next time.